This is Nick from the fan of Michigan Wolverines. Just wanted to comment on Jim Harbaugh.
Sure, Nick. Go right ahead.
I was listening to your show. The last caller, this is just my opinion. I don't think Jim Harbaugh is going back to the NFL. And I really don't know why any NFL team would want to hire him at this point, because he looks lifeless on the sideline. And I guess I just kind of want to get your opinion on how the culture seems to look, just based on what you're seeing in the game. I mean, we're not getting any separation of wide receivers. It seems like nothing goes right consistently in the program right now. And that has to be an issue with coaching. That has to be an issue with the culture. It's like you see Cade McNamara come in, he gets injured. Joe Milton comes in, he makes a good pass, and then the next pass is way off the line. Everything that can go wrong does go wrong. But you can see the talent in the program because there are plays made inconsistently where you sit back and you're like, wow, like, okay, like I think we got something going. It can't be sustained. And it just seems to me like the coaches do not know how to formulate a consistent winning culture in the program. So what's your opinion on that?
My opinion is that I was in favor of the hire of Jim Harbaugh. I thought it made total sense for so many reasons. Of course, a Michigan man, knew the culture, knew the university, knew what was expected. Disciple of Bo Schembechler, of course, quarterbacked for him. And then the work that he did with San Diego, the San Francisco 49ers, and Stanford was stellar. Okay, so I thought it was a good hire. I thought it was a no-brainer. I don't know a soul out there that thought it was a bad hire. And then everything that they put on the field between the first recruiting class going into 2015 and 2016 all spoke to this being a program on the rise, that he was doing all the right things. The recruiting was upgraded substantially. He won the 10 games the first year in a bowl game. Then he came as close as he ever has to the college football playoff and the Big Ten championship in 2016. So then what happened in 2017? I don't know what happened after that excruciatingly close game and close call against Ohio State. I don't know.
John O'Corn happened.
Well, that's a great point, because even though a lot of people that don't really watch the games or aren't hyper-focused on Michigan or Ohio State or the Big Ten just think that Ohio State just kills Michigan every year. Well, in 2017, even though, as you well know, even though it was a 31-20 game, if Michigan had just capable, not great, quarterback play in that game, they probably beat Ohio State in 2017. Yeah. They were up 14-0. They were only down 24-20 in the fourth quarter, and O'Corn missed like everything. So that's a good point. So they go 8-5 in 2017. They blow a 19-7 lead in the Outback Bowl to South Carolina. So at some point in there, and then the 2018 Ohio State game was a complete mystery to me, because I remember sitting here and posting videos where I went through number for number in comparing Ohio State and Michigan against the 5 common opponents that they had that year. And Michigan was far superior, playing much better football than Ohio State. And then we see 62-39. So I think at some point, even though Jim Harbaugh continued to win and beat the teams he was supposed to beat, there became some psychological barrier in trying to bust through that Ohio State issue. And seeing, they were already in a position where they're taking on one of the top 2 or 3 coaches in America who's recruiting out of his mind, and having to get past that was tough enough. And then became this psychological divide of trying to get past them on the field that I think, and I'm one of the last people, Nick, that tries to read people's minds or their body language. But I've even said in recent weeks that, yeah, Jim Harbaugh's not the same guy today than he was in San Francisco and in his early days at Michigan. I just think that he's
and yeah, not to cut you off, I completely agree.
Yep.
But it's just like we're looking at a guy here who's literally snapping headsets into back at San Francisco, compared to a guy who, I mean, is literally unenthusiastic about pulling a face mask over his mouth.
I think he's lost fire because he's resigned to the fact that they can't get it done. I think he's just become, even though he doesn't really show it, I think he's become just so frustrated that he doesn't know what to do. He's tried what he knows to do to get them to an elite level and get them past Ohio State.
And it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
And this is kind of my idea with the whole thing, is that I think Jim Harbaugh is probably the best at taking your talent and maximizing their productivity or their effectiveness immediately. But he doesn't know how to sustain a winning culture. When you look at Dabo Swinney, when you look at Nick Saban, when you look at, Urban Meyer is an all-time great. It's ridiculous what he's able to do. But Jim Harbaugh is one of those coaches who can take your talent and immediately turn it around.
It's true.
But, besides Michigan, where has he been farther for 4 years? I think he's found himself in a pickle here. He does not know how to sustain a winning culture. And a lot of people will say, well, he rubs off on people or he's difficult to play for. I just don't think, I guess I can't really think of another program, can you, where he's been longer than 4 or 5 years?
No. And that's really odd that he would be able to take other people's personnel, just through, I don't know, his own will, the respect that he commands, organization, whatever, through some teaching skill, be able to harness whatever the ceiling is on that personnel and be able to win with it. And then in this job, he's been able to recruit well and not be able to sustain that. It just doesn't make any sense that he could take lesser talent, win with that, go 10-3, 10-3 those first 2 years, finish in the top 10, and then get the recruits that he wants that should be tailor-made for whatever he wants that team to be, both sides of the ball, and not be able to develop that. On top of that, I'll just make one other point from the quarterback position. He took the retreads of the Jake Rudocks and the Wilton Spates, who are very limited quarterbacks, and he made them game managers, which was the best he could do, and they did reasonably well, and they won. And then once he gets, and I'm not selling Shea Patterson as a great quarterback, but he's at least athletic. The last couple of guys he's worked with, Shea Patterson in particular, and now Joe Milton, are at least athletic guys, and he seems to do better with the guys that he can just kind of keep under wraps as pocket passers and play action guys that throw to the tight end.
Well, and I completely agree with that. I guess my main comment on that is, with regards to Shea Patterson, I think we can all agree that the quarterbacks of Joe Milton, with Jim Harbaugh developing quarterbacks, some of the throws that Joe Milton has made this year, and even the limited action we've seen in Cade McNamara, you see more wow plays. Maybe that's different in play calling, but at least from Joe Milton, when you see him at his peak, that's not, those are not throws that you saw Shea Patterson make, I guess, as consistently, which is, I guess, alarming, even though Joe Milton has been inconsistent. But I'm kind of curious. I want to get back to this point. You talk about 2018 in Michigan and going up against Ohio State. What, and maybe you haven't, and I guess I haven't, but I'm kind of curious with regards to downfield shots or explosive plays, passing plays past 20, 30 yards. I'm kind of curious what that statistic, and maybe you have looked this up, what that statistic would be with Ohio State compared to Michigan, because I remember back in 2018, the game that Ohio State played against Maryland, they got in a shootout. It was 50-something to 50-something.
Yep.
And there was a lot of unlucky plays. There was a fumble by Dwayne Haskins. There was, I think Maryland literally fumbled the ball and then recovered it in the end zone to get a touchdown. A lot of unlucky things happened. But that game became explosive. And I remember a theme of that season was, if you go back and you look at the first game against Notre Dame that Michigan played, it seemed conservative. But from there on out, they played in that similar type of fashion, I guess, throughout the season, but they became more effective. But there were not many deep shots. There were not many explosive passing plays. And Dwayne Haskins is not going to set the all-time passing record in Ohio State history or whatever he did. I remember Ohio State being, as far as the deep ball goes, very explosive. So I'm kind of curious, like, maybe in every other statistic, Michigan would have, superseded Ohio State. But as far as being an offensively explosive football team, if you look at every game that season, it almost wasn't even close. And I think when you have Urban Meyer, who is a game planning fiasco, he's a genius. Fiasco is not the right word, but just a genius. I guess I'm just kind of curious if, whenever looking at those statistics, like 20, 30 plus explosive plays, maybe that would give an explanation of what happened in that game, 2018.
Well, the explanation that's been given by most, and I've talked about it here, and not that I came up with it, it was more so Michigan people that I've had on here, is that Michigan's defense has always excelled under Don Brown against inferior talent, and so Michigan was better than the 9 or 10 teams they played that season after Notre Dame. And, I remember, for example, them holding Michigan State to under 100 yards of total offense. And the only reason Michigan State scored is because they had almost a pick six. Otherwise, they shut out Michigan State. And then they just become a different defense when they're playing elite talent. And in that conference, because of style of play and because Michigan had the second or third best talent in the conference, they just weren't facing teams that would take advantage of their man-to-man approach.
Do you think that with five-star talent, that Don Brown's defense is sustainable in the Big Ten, or do you not think that it has anything to do with talent and that it just has to do with being able to draw up defensive adjustment schemes in the game? Maybe you're making halftime adjustments to just slow down a defense enough to outscore them. Do you think we're in that kind of era, or do you think that Don Brown because there's been reports, you have Damani Jackson, you have Will Johnson, two five-star talents who literally visited Michigan, which is a weird thing about recruiting. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. They come to visit Michigan when they get beat 49-11 by Wisconsin. All of a sudden, these two five-star cornerbacks think they're attracted. It sounds like they're attracted to Michigan because they think that they can solve the problem. Do you think that elite talent can revitalize a Don Brown's defense? Or do you think he's kind of an old dinosaur who that just doesn't work anymore?
Okay. So I think there's kind of two parts to this. I think that elite talent always solves some issues. That the old saying that the Jimmies and Joes are more important than the X's and O's, I agree with to an extent.
Because let me interject here real quick, because you made this point before, which is an excellent point. Don Brown, if people better be paying attention, because I almost think it's almost been a negative defensively this year, because he's been playing so much zone and situations, and guys have been blowing their jobs, blowing their assignments.
Yeah.
But if you actually pay attention to the film, and I know that this guy is considered a hot pocket in a sense, and by that I mean he's a lot of people try to roast him in the Michigan fan base. But Jamon Green, man-to-man assignment, his improvement week to week has been very solid. I mean, even in the Penn State loss, his tendencies, if you go back and you look at his tape in the Minnesota game, he, for some reason, refused to look back at the ball. And Charles Woodson actually pointed this out on Fox. But basically, I don't want to go into it too much, but week to week, and actually today, Penn State tried to attack him, and previous teams have. And Indiana exposed them, and some other teams exposed them. But overall, he's made a lot of improvement. And I think he was only a 3-star. You can correct me if I'm wrong. He might have been a 4-star. But there's been injuries to the Don Brown defense. But overall, I mean, it seems like he has tried to play a lot of, or at least give a lot more zone looks, and because that's not his, money driver, I guess, it's almost kind of got him burned more. They don't really have a defensive identity. So I'm almost kind of wondering if he got some of that elite talent, and maybe if he got Kwity Paye's not going to be back, but some general edge rushers. But if he got those elite corners again, which he definitely doesn't have, Vincent Gray has always been a number 2. Jamon Green, I think, is a redshirt sophomore, and inexperience and injuries hit you hard. But
all right, let me get to Nick's question, and I'll take whatever calls were coming in. Nick was asking about Don Brown's defense, my thoughts about them getting better talent more. So they have tremendous talent at Michigan. The defensive backfield right now, with the loss of everything, most of the players, aside from Daxton Hill from 2019, is a bit shaky this year, but it's been really good at Michigan. We see the guys playing in secondaries in the NFL over the past few years. So you're always going to improve your situation with talent. Talent is more important, slightly more important in my estimation, than coaching. But we do see what coaches like Urban Meyer was mentioned a number of times on that phone call. As soon as he walks into a particular program, they're automatically going to be better the next year, even with the same players. So coaching is paramount in college football. Talent is necessary to win big. The issue I see with the Don Brown defense, and he knows football. He's a defensive coordinator at that level for a reason. But I believe that anyone who is a capable coach in football has philosophies that are pillars of what they believe. And let's go to the coordinator level, especially coordinators, guys that are coordinators, because they're the real nuts and bolts of the operation in terms of planning the offense or the defense and building that structure and that base, that philosophy, and implementing it. So if you're an offensive coach or a defensive coach and you're a coordinator at that level, Michigan, then you should have certain pillars or tenets that you believe more than anything. The 4-3 is the best defense. Man-to-man's the best coverage. on and on and on. And to even break it down into techniques that you believe, playing inside techniques more important, or playing a two gap is usually the better way. So you're going to have philosophies and theories that you hold true to. But you need to be able to take that model that works, you believe is the best under perfect conditions and all things being equal, and mold it and change it and adapt it to the situation. Meaning you don't have the personnel to play a 4-3, so you need to do something different. You don't have the personnel to always play man coverage, so you need to do something different. So I think that might be one issue. Great coaches have tenets and pillars that they build their system on, that they always believe in, but they need to be adaptable. Secondly, I believe that Don Brown's approach is too simplistic for today, because these quarterbacks and receivers are so much more advanced today in 2020 than they were coming through the high school ranks 10 years ago, 15 years ago. These camps that they go to, these Elite 11 type camps, and that's only the one that comes to mind, there's a zillion of them, prepare these student athletes as throwers and catchers of the football. They can throw and catch so much better than previous generations. They're so far advanced coming out of high school. I made the comment the other night that I was watching like the 1981 Sugar Bowl, Notre Dame, Georgia. And for as much as I will defend that era of football in certain ways, because they didn't have the state-of-the-art nutrition and equipment, and they had to play on both sides of the ball, and they had to do different things and play every play and all that. Not on both sides of the ball at that point, but play every play. And I honor and respect them for all the things that they withstood that aren't in today's game, like playing every play. The ability to throw and catch the football is so much further advanced today. And then on top of the physical development and the skill development is the mental development of the quarterbacks. I'll take this call in just a second. The quarterbacks and the receivers, that they can read defenses so much better than they could before. So for you to go out there play after play after play after play after play against elite quarterbacks and wide receivers and show them the same defensive look over and over and over in coverage. I know that he switches it up in regards to blitz packages, but to show the same coverage every play after play after play after play cannot be effective. Now, I think Greg Schiano and Ohio State aired to the other end of the spectrum a couple of years ago when they made it too exotic for these kids and they brought too many NFL concepts to college, and they had these great athletes thinking too much and didn't let them just cut loose and play. So you can err too far to that side. But I think Don Brown's coverages are too simplistic.